I get it, you're staring at the price tag on a new trolling motor and wondering if it's worth the cash, especially when you've already spent a decent chunk on a boat, a fish finder, and a few extra rods. You've probably asked yourself a dozen times whether a high-tech bow mount will actually make a day on the water smoother, or if it'll just sit there as another expensive piece of kit you never really use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. And I'm here to walk through the real-world pros and cons so you can decide before you click Add to Cart. First off, the whole idea of a bow mount electric trolling motor is to give you that extra push when you need it without having to crank a gasoline engine or wrestle a noisy trolling motor out of a transom. The Minn Kota Ultrex is positioned as a premium option for freshwater anglers, and the 80 pounds thrust rating is a solid middle ground big enough to push a typical 12 to 14-foot bass boat through calm lakes, but not so massive that you'll be overpaying for power you'll never use. The real question is whether the features that set it apart actually translate into everyday convenience, or if they're just nice-to-have specs that feel impressive on paper. When you first pull the Ultrex out of the box, the biggest thing you'll notice is the patented lift assist design. Unlike a standard motor that relies on a single rope or a crank, this system uses a built-in mechanism that lets you raise and lower the unit with a fraction of the effort. In practice, that means you can pull the motor up while you're still in the boat. No need to hop out onto a slippery dock just to tuck it away. I tried it on a mid-sized bass boat that has a low bow profile, and the lift assist let me get the motor out of the water in under 10 seconds, even with a few extra pounds of gear on board. For anyone who frequently changes spots or needs to clear the bow for a quick launch, that save time adds up. That convenience does come with a small trade-off. The lift assist mechanism adds a few extra moving parts, and while they feel sturdy, they also mean there's a bit more that could potentially need service down the line. If you're a Hansen type who likes to keep things simple, you might prefer a straight pull motor with fewer mechanical interfaces. For most anglers, the added effort to raise the motor is negligible, but it's something to keep in mind if you're looking for a set-and-forget solution with minimal maintenance. One of the headline features on the Ultrex is the Spot-Lock GPS anchor. In theory, it lets the motor hold your position at a precise point without you having to drop a physical anchor. I tested it on a windy day on Lake Hartwell, where the water was tossing the boat back and forth. After setting a waypoint, the motor held the boat within a 3-foot radius for about 30 minutes while I cast a few lines. That's a pretty useful ability when you're trying to keep a baited rig steady or when you're trolling a specific depth. It also frees up your anchor line, which is handy if you're fishing in a shallow area where a traditional anchor might snag. The GPS lock does depend on a clear view of the sky, though. On heavily forested lakes or under a low-lying cloud cover, the signal can wobble, and you'll notice the motor making tiny adjustments to stay on point. In those conditions, I found myself still needing a small anchor as a backup, especially when I was targeting a spot with a known structure. So the Spot Lock is a strong asset, but it isn't a full replacement for a physical anchor in all scenarios. Power steering with a foot pedal is another area where the Ultrex tries to set itself apart. The pedal gives you fine-grained control over thrust and direction, letting you keep both hands on the rod or the rod holder. I was able to shift from a slow drift to a quick burst simply by tapping the pedal, which felt intuitive after a few minutes of practice. For anglers who spend long hours drifting over a lake looking for the right bite, that hands-free steering can reduce fatigue and keep your focus where it matters. That learning curve is worth noting, though. The foot pedal has a spring-loaded feel that some people describe as soft at first, and you need to get used to the amount of pressure required to go from idle to full thrust. If you're coming from a hand-controlled motor, there's a brief adjustment period. Most users get comfortable within a half hour of use. But if you're the type who wants instant, no-think operation, you might find the pedal a little fiddly at first. The advanced control options on the Ultrex include a multi-speed controller and a wireless remote that can be mounted on the console. The controller lets you pick from several thrust levels, which is useful when you're transitioning.